Plus, yet again, we got to save a set of cylinder heads from going to the boneyard and being crushed up and sent over to China to, you know, produce your garbage aluminum cylinder heads. Whew, did I spark up some controversy in that Vortec head video? Well, today I guess we need to take a look and see if I'm just talking smack or if we're laying down some facts. Today we have two pairs of aluminum cylinder heads, one set an AFR Enforcer set, the other a PBM Strike Force head. We're going to be pulling these apart, taking a look at them, and seeing how good the quality actually is. Alrighty, so let's compare these. Looking at these, it is very certain that these were probably spit out of the same exact factory. All of the castings are exactly the same from head to head. You know, even coming in and checking some of the marks and stuff, like, you know, the edges here, it'll be like the valve cover rail, the same exact cut. Literally the only difference that has been seen between these two heads is that this head is engraved AFR and that one doesn't have a engraving on it. And then these AFR heads have the steam holes already pre-drilled in them, as these PBM ones do not. Of course, you know, these were probably spit out of a factory in China, which that is a very common theme that we see nowadays with aftermarket heads for the cost. Something that you're going to see, though, that I want to make light of in this video is the quality of the components that are used and then the quality of the actual workmanship. So to really be able to do a head-to-head comparison and show you some of the flaws of these heads, there's a few different tests that we're going to run. We're going to start out by doing a vacuum test on valves. Then we're going to move on to doing a valve concentricity test. And then to wrap everything up, since the AFR Enforcer heads are a completely assembled head and the valves are already out to do some other testing, we're going to actually check the grind job on the valve and see how well they actually cut it. For this vacuum test, what we're looking for is to see how well the valve and the valve seat seal together. So to make this test a fair A to B test between the AFR heads and the PBM heads, something that we had to do here is we actually decided to pull apart the AFR Enforcer heads. Obviously, like I mentioned before, they came together as a complete set, fully packaged head, pretty much ready to drop on. So decided to pull our valve springs off and our valve seals. So something else that we noticed is that the valve and the valve seat both had assembly lube oil on them. We want to make sure that the valve seat and the valve itself are completely clean of any oils, because basically the oil is actually going to act as a sealer and help the valve seal a little more.
It's pulling the valve into the seat, so it'll make it seal better, and it could actually bend the valve to make it seat and show good in the vacuum test.
Okay. Oh, she's a squirter. All right, this is the test without the oil on it. Yep. Which that's pretty much where the PBM head was reading anyway, so. Okay, so they're pretty much straight up head to head, exactly the same. So notes to take away from this vacuum test is that both heads vacuum tested pretty well. The only thing is, though, is that perhaps maybe a vacuum test, as good as it is to have some data, I think we need to dig a little bit further into these heads and get some more precise numbers on what we're trying to actually look for and see here. Again, these would QC beautifully with the vacuum test, but as you're gonna see, is a vacuum test actually as great as it's supposed to be? Alrighty, up next we're gonna be doing a valve concentricity test on both the AFR heads and the PBM heads. What is a valve concentricity test, Joe?
In layman's term, it's checking how well the valve will seal to the seat.
What's the importance of that in the sense of how the head functions and how the valve and the seat kind of work together?
You want the valve to come down and touch the seat all the way around, all 360 degrees, and touch it all at the same time. If there's a high spot on one side, you know, one part of the valve will touch down first, and then basically the valve bends to seal on the rest of it, on the low portion.
So we got our gauge already preset up here. You know, obviously there's an industry standard for what all of these should be cut at and spit out from the factory from. Do you have an idea of like what that number would be? So when we see it on the gauge here, what it should read at?
So industry standard is typically 1/1000th of runout per valve inch. So we should see no more than 2 and 2 lines. Okay. So let's see what we got.
Whoa.
Ooh. So we have 3-1, which is well outside of industry standard. Typically, I like to shoot for less than 1/1000th, which is much tighter than industry standard.
And that also has a lot to go into the longevity of the components inside the head.
Yes, you never want to have more run out than you have guide clearance. So in this case, you know, we should have roughly 1.5 thousandths of guide clearance, which means we shouldn't have more than 1.5 thousandths of run out. Otherwise, it's going to force the valve stem into the guide when it closes, and you know, will prematurely wear your guide out.
I guess we did that one. Do you want to hop over and we'll see what the PBM has in store for us?
Sure.
All right, sliding over to the PBM heads. This is just the bare casting that you bought.
Correct.
Basically, when you buy them as a bare casting, the whole point is you should still take it to your local machine shop and get a valve job done on it. So let's see how the concentricity checks on this intake valve here. Wow. Yeah, that's well out of industry spec and barn performance machine specs. So I'm assuming these are gonna, get a full valve job done on them to get them where they need to be.
Correct. I don't buy any head assembled because they're just not up to the specs that I use. So I buy heads bare, and then I pick my parts with good quality American-made parts that I know work.
Yep.
And we go from there, and then we do all the machine work and touch up whatever's necessary, to make sure that the customer gets a good quality product.
Awesome. All right, so now that we have done the intakes, let's bounce over and check some of the concentricities on the exhaust valves. All right, we're back over on the AFRs. On the exhaust valve here, let's see what our concentricity is. Okay, so that one's not that bad, but again, if these are just getting spit out in a factory and they're really not taking the due diligence to check all of these, you want every single valve, whether it's intake or exhaust valve, to, be looking something like that. That one's actually good. But again, it's great that that one's good, but if that one's not good or that one's not good, it's going to cause problems later down the road. So let's hop over to the PBM one and we'll see how the exhaust valves are on that head. Alrighty, we're over on the PBM head. Let's see what we got on this exhaust seat. So right about 2. So not horrible, but not where it should be and could be. If there's anything to take away from this video, if you're gonna buy either set of these heads, take them to a machine shop, get them done right. Because as you can see from this head and this head, there's clearly issues here. So if you bought them and slapped them together, or bought them assembled and just slapped them on a motor, you're gonna see issues down the road. All right, taking this one step further, obviously we just talked about the valve seats. Let's look at the individual valves. So AFR, if I'm not mistaken, comes standard with 8mm valves, correct?
Yes.
So we have 2 exhaust valves here. We're gonna see how true the exhaust valves are. So that one's just about perfect. So that one's pretty good. Let's throw the other one in and see what happens. All right, we got our other valve set up here. Let's see what we got. Ooh, that one's not as cash money. So once again, is that something you're not gonna notice whether that valve is good or not just by eyeballing it? And like I said, these AFRs, I obviously bought them fully assembled, but we do have an engine build coming up sometime in the future that these heads are going on, but they're coming back over here and they're gonna get a complete valve job. And we're gonna make sure that these things are 100% ready to go and are gonna last a good long time, because we don't wanna have issues like that, or with the valve seats that we showed you earlier. So wanna put these on an engine and never have to worry about pulling it off again for those issues. Alrighty, let's give you some closing thoughts and notes on everything that we got going on here. So Obviously, this video was supposed to be kind of a head-to-head comparison between the AFRs and the PBMs, but it's clear to say that these were probably most likely spit out of the same factory. So to pick a clear winner here, I don't think it's fair to do because they're both the same. In certain aspects, the AFRs probably did look a little better, but again, that's going to change from head to head, from valve to valve, and everything else. I think PBM's saving grace here is that they sell this as an unassembled head. PBM is more of a wholesaler, so basically they're selling their heads to a machine shop to basically say, hey, if you buy our heads, buy it through your local machine shop, get the work done at your local machine shop, then you're set and ready to go here. And if you're going to take your heads to the local machine shop, you know what? Make sure those guys have a valve concentricity tester, because as we just saw, yeah, vacuum test is a very common test that a lot of shops will use to make sure that a head will, you know, quote unquote function. But take it to a machine shop that's got a valve concentricity tester, because the valve concentricity test is going to ensure that these heads are going to last you a good long time. If I can tell you anything, and you guys know if you've been around the channel long enough, I've thrown together some pretty big piles of garbage in my day. 283, kind of a pile. The Bankrupt 350, kind of a pile. But that's just me throwing stuff, trying to make something happen in my garage. I need a motor for a project. We're slapping this thing together and crossing our fingers and hope it works. I'm okay with that. But a lot of my more important long-term goals for a lot of projects and, you know, putting motors together and stuff is to have it last, is to have that good quality workmanship and have something that's going to be worth a damn having. If you're going to spend a bunch of money on cylinder heads, well, in my opinion, I think there's more value to paying the extra money out of pocket now to get all of these little things corrected, because it's going to last you longer in the future and it's not going to cost you as much money in the future. And, you know, that's why I knocked these AFR heads so hard in that Vortec video. This is the reason why. We just proved it in this video. I'm not here saying AFR is a terrible product and don't go buy it, but I just want you to be aware of what you're actually buying out of the box. You know, a lot of people wanted to talk so much smack on those Vortec heads that we put together because they were cracked and, oh, these heads are junk, they won't last. And, well, I can firmly assure you that these heads have been together for 4 or 5 years now, and they have easily seen 50,000 miles between two different motors. And, man, they have been absolutely killer. And why have they been this good? It's because of the quality and craftsmanship that went into putting these cylinder heads together by Joe over at Barn Performance Machine. The only mistake that was really made, and it was all on me, was the fact that I painted the intake surfaces of the head. And I take full responsibility for that. That had nothing to do with Joe and what Joe did. If anything, he actually looked at me and said, "You sure you want to put it together like this?" And because I was so crunched for time and honestly just didn't care, it came back to bite me. And that's why I'm riding this thing so hard, is because you make these little mistakes or you don't take the time, you know, you don't want to spend the money to get some good quality stuff, well, then you can expect to come back and bite you. And I'm telling you that from my personal experience. I do want to take a moment here to thank Joe over at Barnes Performance Machine. Man, he is such an awesome dude. I mean, not only does he let me come over there and film videos like this, but then he lets me all in, hands-on, running machines, you know, building and working on my projects. And then he lets me come into his shop, his domain, and lets me film all of this for you. And, man, I cannot begin to tell you what value that has had to me and Boneyard Revivals. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Joe, because you are a crucial part of Boneyard Revivals and what we do here every single day. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys got some value out of this video. If you did, you can consider subscribing. Do me a favor, get out in the shop, start wrenching on your projects. Your dreams will not work unless you do. And hey, if you guys got a project that you're working on, let me know down in the comment sections. I'd love to hear about what you guys are working on. We'll catch you next time here on Boneyard Revivals. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Whoa.
Ooh.
Jesus. What is that? What the f is that?
On this intake valve here. Wow.
Private Pyle has dishonored himself and dishonored the platoon.